Welcome to Success in Brief with your host, Rosanne Felicello. In every episode, we feature successful women attorneys and other business professionals to reflect on what career advice would you give your younger self. We hope to provide insights and inspiration toward your professional success. You can find this show at www.felicellolaw.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Success in Brief, Rosanne Felicello.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosanne Felicello, and this is Success in Brief. And I'm thrilled today to welcome my dear friend, Sara Wells, to today's podcast. Sara has been a friend for over 20 years, and she's also a very successful trust and estates attorney in Boston, a mom and stepmom to 5, and also a hospice volunteer. And I don't know how she manages it all, but she always does so with grace and a smile. So welcome, Sara.
Thank you, Rosanne, so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's hard to believe, it's July. We graduated from law school 20 years ago, and we were studying for the bar this time together 20 years ago. It's amazing how fast time flies.
It certainly is. We have our reunion coming up.
I know, which you're also
of course
very hard at work planning, which is thankfully we have you as a member of our class, because I don't think it would get done otherwise. So thank you for that.
Of course.
So what advice would you offer today's graduates?
Yeah, I think that they need to be able to think outside the box, and I know we'll talk about this later, but my career did not follow a normal path to get where I am. And I think that they just need to remember that, sometimes things aren't going to happen the way they plan, and they need to be able to pivot. COVID's a great example of that, right? Everybody had to learn how to pivot, and just, keep their options open and see where it takes them.
I think that's great advice. I mean, I think certainly also sometimes what you think you wanted isn't really what you wanted, right? Would you agree with that?
100%. My dad's a lawyer and he was a litigator. And so when I was in law school, when I first went to law school, I thought for sure that I would be a litigator like him. And trust and estates is about as far away from litigation as you can get. So, you never know where you're going to end up.
And not only are you a trust and estates lawyer, you're the chair of the private client group at the Boston office of Morgan, Lewis, and Bockius. And you also are on the management committee there. So you just mentioned that you didn't think you were going to go into trust and estates. How did you decide that was a career path for you?
Yeah. So my second year of law school, I took trust and estates as a class because it's on the bar exam, as you know, and just absolutely loved the fact patterns, loved my professor. She ended up needing a research assistant. I applied, I got that position. So for a couple of years, I was helping her, write some articles on trust and estates matters. And that's what really kind of gave me the T&E bug, I guess you would say. And
you would say that.
I would say that, right? I love my profession. Yeah. And then, I decided out of law school, I ended up not actually getting a job back in 2002. I had summered at an insurance defense firm and knew I didn't want to do that. So then I was starting from scratch in, 2001, 2002, which, as you recall, was a horrendous time.
Not a good
time. Not a good time, right. And ended up working at a trust and estates boutique firm, which also, as you know, what you learn about in law school and what you actually practice is very different. And so it allowed me to learn that I really did love trust and estates and doing it day to day. And that's what I wanted to, have my career in.
That's great. It's always nice when you find the thing that makes you want to get up in the morning and go to work, right?
Definitely.
So how did you manage to leapfrog, though, from you were at a small boutique in Boston to big firm? Because you went to Mintz before you were at Morgan Lewis. So how did you make that transition?
Yeah. So my first job at Tyler & Reynolds was great because it really, taught me so much about the practice. And it also, being a smaller firm, did not have quite the high hour requirements that big firms do. And so while I was at Tyler & Reynolds, I went to school at night and got my master's in tax, which is very beneficial in the world of trust and estates. So it was really great because during the day I would be drafting estate plans or administering estates. But at night, I'd be learning about, why we're doing that, in particular tax provisions and whatnot. And so Tyler and Reynolds really allowed me to get that degree. And then essentially, right when I was graduating with my LLM, a headhunter called and said that Mintz Levin was looking. And at the time, I was totally happy at Tyler and Reynolds and never planned on leaving, but they were literally like a block away. And I'm like, I may as well just walk down there and meet them and just see what it's all about. And once I met everybody and kind of heard about that practice, and, big firms lend themselves to have more sophisticated practices and kind of more difficult client situations. I then really wanted the job, and thankfully I got it. And I spent 10 and a half years there.
That's quite a significant amount of time. And then you moved on to Morgan Lewis. So how did you decide to move from Mintz, where you were fairly happy, as I recall?
I was totally happy. Yeah. So, I thought that I would be at Mintz forever. But again, it's one of those things where you've got to, be open potentially to new opportunities. And Morgan Lewis had taken over Bingham McCutcheon in Boston, which was a great firm, and had a really great and well-respected trust and estates practice in Boston. And when that transition happened, essentially, I think some of the lawyers left not knowing if a bigger firm, because Morgan Lewis, has 2,000 lawyers worldwide, would keep around their trust and estates practice when they really only had one trust and estates practice at the time in Philadelphia. And so a lot of lawyers left, but all the clients mostly stayed, and they have some amazing, amazing clients. And at the time, the head of the department was, a few years away from retirement, and Morgan Lewis was committed to keeping the trust and estates practice around. So they told him, go out, find yourself a younger partner that you can transition clients to, and who can eventually take over the department when you retire. And, that's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity when he came to me with that. Again, I kind of like when I switched from Tyler and Reynolds to Mintz, I was like, I don't know. Then I was like, again, it's only like a block away. Everything's really close. I'll go talk and hear it out. And just fell in love with the culture at Morgan Lewis, and, they kept all their promises to me. So that's been great. It's been 7 years.
Yeah. It seems like yesterday, but I feel like as we get older, the years go by faster.
It certainly does.
So you've been through all those years, 10 years at Mintz and 7 years at Morgan Lewis. I guess you've also managed to raise a family of 5 children. How do you get it all done?
You have to be very efficient, honestly. Yes, we have 5 kids ranging in age from just turned 9 to just turned 17. Those are both boys, and 3 girls in the middle. One, I've had the same nanny for 10 years, who I kind of call her my wife. She does everything for us, right? And we would absolutely die without her. I think also trust and estates lends itself to having a family, because although we have the same hour requirements, as everybody else at Morgan Lewis, we don't have trials coming up where you have to cram for weekends or weeks at a time. We don't have deals, right? Like corporate lawyers, where suddenly you're scrambling to meet all these deadlines. The only thing that really comes up that is an emergency situation in trust and estates is when someone's dying, and that's kind of legitimate, right? And you can make that happen when you have to get documents done for someone in that situation. But it allows you to really plot out your weeks, plot out your months, and make sure that you can get everything done.
That's great. That's interesting that you say that. And I like that you refer to your nanny as your wife, because I think we could all use a wife, traditional.
Yes.
Housewife.
Yes, exactly.
To take care of, manage the household.
Yeah.
Still looking for mine. I don't have one.
Yeah, we're going on 11 years. So
it's hard. I mean, it's hard to find the right person, right? I mean, I've circled through a number of au pairs, nannies, but finding the right person to really take on that role is a challenge in itself.
Yeah. Well, and as a funny side note about that, she actually doubles now between being our nanny and being my husband's law firm's essentially like practice assistant. Because when my kids started to go to school full time, I did not want to lose her, because we had her and she was fabulous, but I didn't really need her the same number of hours. And it just worked out that he had his own firm and they were looking for someone, and I knew she was certainly capable. And that's been one of the greatest decisions as well. So
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good way to make it.
Again, kind of goes to thinking outside the box, right? Like, what do I have to do to keep this nanny?
Yes. So in addition to all of that, you also find time to volunteer as a hospice volunteer. So can you tell us a little bit about that work and what you do there?
Yeah, no, I do actually a good amount of volunteering. As a side note, I've been the PTO president at our elementary school for 8 years. I just finished 3 years as PTO president at our middle school. And yes, hospice I got involved in the beginning of 2020, very timely. I originally did it because I wanted to find an organization that I could volunteer at, that I could get my kids involved and kind of teach them about giving back. What I hadn't really thought through is there's not a whole lot they can do for hospice until they're 16, but they've done some things. And hospice is an organization that's near and dear to my heart. I've had grandparents go through hospice, in-laws go through hospice. So I think the work that they do is really amazing. So I trained with them in like January of 2020. And essentially volunteers really are trained to go to wherever they are, mostly nursing homes, and visit with them at least once a week and do, talk about whatever they want to talk about, do whatever they want to do. They want to play cards. We're the only people that go to see them that don't have an agenda, right? We're not there to take blood pressure. We're not there to talk to them about how they feel. But as you can imagine, there's a good amount of training that goes on as to how to respond to certain questions if they ask you about their outcome or something like that. Now, I only did that for maybe a month before, obviously, all the nursing homes shut down in March of 2020. But my hospice organization worked really hard to keep us involved and connected, making meals for people. And, my kids' dance school, I worked with hospice that we went and did an outdoor show for them during COVID as a way to, have them connect with someone. My kids actually have been involved. My 14-year-old daughter has been a pen pal to some of them. Some of them like to write letters. And so she's written to them, and it's a good lesson to her because, they die at the end of her pen pal stint. But she knows that what she's doing, means a lot to them and is helping make their final days better. So I think it's important, to find time to give back however you can.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful that you're able to fit that in. Have you gone back to in-person volunteering now?
We have gone back to in-person volunteering. Yeah, I've taken a little bit of a hiatus only because I had 2 kids with graduations and whatnot, and there was a COVID outbreak in the nursing home I was going to, and I just didn't want to risk getting that and ruining any of my kids' activities. But and in the meantime, like I do things like I write all the birthday cards to them each month, a handwritten note, and whatever I can do that they need.
I still don't understand how you fit it all in. I don't think you still.
I do.
But it's very impressive and great that you're able to give back so much. So in addition to volunteering and practicing and being a mom, you also have done quite a bit of travel.
Yes.
So how is it that you've been able to, how did you make your career basically serve your life so you can do all these other things that really make your life full?
Yeah, no, I think, again, trust in states, again, lends itself to be able to do things like take vacations. When I'm on vacation, very rarely am I completely disconnected. Sure. And it's not so much, I am doing it for the clients because I want to make sure, obviously, someone's there if they need them. But it's also for me. I just like to keep things going. Even when I took 3 maternity leaves, right? I would still want to make sure that my clients were well served. And obviously I have associates and of counsel that are there to jump in. But I think my personality just lends itself that I like to keep tabs on things. But that being said, in 2022, you can always check your email and you always can, be found. International travel gets a little tricky with the time change, but you can make it work. And I think it's worth it because I think it does a lot for my mental health and my desire to want to keep practicing law when you get to take a break.
Yeah, no, it's essential to recharge. I think that's definitely key. I found that just recently being away and being out of the country really helps because the time zone, it is helpful in some ways because you can respond and know that you're not going to get a response while you're out, seeing the sites because they're sleeping.
Yeah. As you mentioned too, I've got a blended family. And so when my husband and I got together, we both already had children. So we never had a house without any children. And so I found it to be important for us to be able to get away, the two of us, and, have time, because we didn't on the other end of the relationship.
No, that's a good point. Where are you off to next?
Where are we off to next? We're going to family camp up in Vermont with all the kids in a few weeks. We do that every August. And then he and I are going on a cruise from Rome to Barcelona in the end of October. We're bringing my parents and we're bringing his dad and stepmom. So.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That should be interesting. I'll be
yes. They get along though, so it's kind of nice actually. They can hang out together too.
That's good. A little bit of a reprieve from you.
Yes.
So, what do you value most about these careers that we've chosen to be an attorney?
Yeah, I mean, mine, I think, not that all attorneys aren't helping people, but I love trust and estates partly because I'm dealing with individual people and families. Mm-hmm. And, much of what I do is the estate planning, and, rarely is it that somebody is dying or very sick. It's usually just planning for well ahead in the future. But you're helping them, right? You're helping them. This is something that they need to get done. And I'll tell you, there's nothing like a pandemic to make people want to get their estate plans done. But then on the other half, the estate administration, most of the time people that have died are elderly or have been sick, but it's still a horrific time for their family. And it's very rewarding for me to be able to kind of take the stress away from paperwork and tax returns and that sort of thing, and allow them to grieve, which obviously I can't help them with. So, it's a very rewarding field for me.
You put it very nicely. I feel like it's interesting that your personality really suits that career. So, and I think it goes back to something you started off, discussing, think outside the box, and you really need to think about what is going to make you happy in practicing. And I think that the field of law has so many different facets. It really gives people an opportunity to find the one that suits their goals and their personality versus other people's strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. And like you said, there's just so many different fields that you can go into in law that, I don't know that I even really knew what a trust was when I started law school even. No. And you just have to be open-minded about, what's out there and what's best, like you said, for your personality.
Yeah, there's not many trust and estates lawyers featured on popular media, like in movies or TV shows. Although there are a few, right? There's a few.
If we are, we're usually very elderly with a bow tie. So I'm also trying to take away that stereotype.
Right. It's not only, older white gentlemen that can practice trust and estate.
Exactly.
So now that we have been practicing, I know we don't like to say it's been 20 years, but it's been 20 years. Would you recommend a career in law to other women starting out?
Absolutely. I would say, I tell people, don't go into it because you think you're necessarily going to make a lot of money or you don't have anything, anywhere else to land. I used to teach LSAT classes for Princeton Review right when I graduated from law school. And you would get people coming in, especially back then in 2002-ish, that were like, well, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm just going to go to law school. Like, no, you should know that that's really what you want to do. It's a lot of money and a lot of work to get through it. But totally worth it. And as we said, there's so many different, fields of law, that I think there really is something for everybody.
Yeah. You just find your strength, right? And
Exactly.
What about, so I want to talk just a few minutes about this Dobbs decision that came out in the Supreme Court. And, I know that, both you and I are probably on the same side of this and are devastated at what this is doing for women in the country. But as an attorney, from the legal perspective, I think that the decision is also gravely hurt the legal profession in terms of the stature of the Supreme Court and the position that they're in. I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not very happy with our Supreme Court for that decision. I will say that the day that decision came down, I did actually have newfound respect for my profession in the sense of how my firm handled it. The head of my whole firm is a woman, and she sent the whole firm, just a beautifully written email about the firm and the fact that we have offices, in so many states that have obviously differing laws at this point, and about how the firm was going to support everybody. And also that the firm was going to support anybody who wanted to, take action to try to help the situation. So, I agreed, obviously, that I would do that immediately. And they now have an email list where they'll send out emails like, okay, anybody who wants to do this, we're looking to help in light of the decision. So I really appreciate it, I guess, and had a newfound respect maybe for my firm.
Mm-hmm.
But I know I'm not the only firm, right? I know there's a lot of big firms out there that have taken, similar stances. And so I guess I have more respect on that level.
Yeah, for the practicing attorneys, I guess it's more like the sort of the structure of the Supreme Court and the fact that rights are just being decimated.
Right.
I don't know if there's another way to say it. It's just I just see the tragedy unfolding, and you feel a little bit powerless when even big firms are sort of scrambling as to what do we do to fix this, and what do we do to make it so that the people that work for us are protected and that are able to access healthcare. And
I know you understand, right? We have daughters similar ages.
Yes.
It's a difficult conversation to have with them as to what this means.
Yeah, there's certain states I won't let my kids go to college in. I know that's for sure, because I don't want to be in a situation where they can't have access to healthcare.
Yeah, or I don't want to support that state.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Moving on.
Yes.
To our last three questions.
Since law school.
Because we're not going to solve the issue today, unfortunately.
Sadly, no.
Okay, last three questions for you. These are more rapid fire. They're at least intended to be more rapid fire.
Okay. Hit me.
If you couldn't be an attorney, what career would you choose?
If I couldn't be an attorney, what career would I choose? I was always interested in medicine as well. I'm just not very good at biology, and I don't have a very steady hand to be a surgeon. But I think probably in medicine, there's lots of different fields, just as there are in law, that I would have been able to find something that would have worked for me. And I think medicine lends itself to helping people a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a great one. What is one thing you wish you knew when you graduated law school that you know now?
Just that your career will take different paths, right? As you can imagine, when I was not finding a job in 01, 02, you think that this is going to be the rest of your career, and clearly not, right? Your career will take a lot of twists and turns, and you're going to end up where you should be.
Such a nice sentiment.
Yours too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I went in almost opposite career track than you did. I went into big law right out of law school, did that at two different places, and found that it was just too hard to navigate with the kids, and that I actually wanted more control over my practice, and went on my own, and had been very successful on the other side of that.
Right.
And having control over my destiny in a different way. It's just you find success, and it doesn't always look the same. It doesn't always look like what you thought it was going to look like coming out of law school. So
you're right. Yeah, no, my husband did the same thing. He was at, two huge firms, and now he's got his own firm, and he loves it so much more. So you never know. You never know.
It's, whatever works for your personality and your strengths and your weaknesses. And it's certainly not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart to jump ship.
Exactly. Yes, that's true.
But you can make it work.
Definitely.
And then I guess the last rapid fire question is, would you recommend a career in law to your children?
Definitely. And I've talked to them about that, and, just similar to people coming out of college, that just make sure it's the right fit for them. But I would have no qualms about any of them being a lawyer if that's what they want to do.
Great. Well, I have no more questions for today, but thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
I'll see you at our...
You've been listening to Success in Brief with your host, Rosanne Felicello. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others. You can catch prior episodes at www.felicellolaw.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. You've been listening to Success in Brief with your host, Rosanne Felicello. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others. You can catch prior episodes at www.felicellolaw.com and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.